So there you have it, you can finally see the music player. It took me a long time, took me years to figure this out. All I'm doing is capturing my own music player here, and it's audio, right? So is Radiant Dawn good? I own it, but I only played the first couple levels because I hated using the Wiimote as a controller so much. Dude, it's a grid-based strategy RPG, just use the Wiimote horizontally and you'll be fine. Come on. I mean, I will get it if you were playing an action RPG, would be uncomfortable, or any other action type of game, or even certain turn-based RPGs, but a strategy RPG, all you gotta do is click buttons and use the D-pad, and that's it. Shouldn't be too much of a problem in my opinion. But Radiant Dawn is not only good, it's a freaking masterpiece, okay? It's one of the best, absolute best Fire Emblem games of all time. Especially if you're a big fan of Path of Radiance like I am. This is a great follow-up. It does take some liberties with the plot. Near the end, you're like, this went kinda a little bit off the rails, but that shouldn't bother you. I mean, the story is greatly written nonetheless. You got this bunch of characters, these two completely different parties. Ike and the mercenaries, and the new girl, Micaiah, and Sothi. I don't know how his name is pronounced. I don't even remember. The game barely had any voice acting. But whatever the case, man, Radiant Dawn is a freaking, it's a must play. Especially if you like Path of Radiance. But Path of Radiance is indispensable to play before it. Where am I from? I'm from Mexico. That's right. Which JRPGs, to your knowledge, have benefited from negative publicity? Damn. Well, okay. So how about Tales of Cestiria? Well, it's not that great of an example because it's a popular game and people bought it, and a lot of people played it, whether they hate it or not. I think it's one of those games that got a lot of bad reputation, a lot of negative publicity, like you say, and unfortunately, that negative publicity made an even bigger negative impact than positive impact. So I don't think it benefited that greatly. But what I can probably tell you is that games like Tales of Cestiria, Final Fantasy XIII, they may have benefited from negative publicity because people bought them, especially for dirt cheap. Probably most people waited until the game was like $10 or $20 and finally bought it just to see if it was really that bad. And a lot of those people probably played those games and said, oh man, it wasn't as bad as I said, it's actually pretty good. Or it's not as bad, it's not great either, but it's bad, it's okay, So maybe those games got some benefit on sales, but I don't think it helped their reputation by any means. Final Fantasy XIII is still one of the most hated JRPGs in existence. It's a pretty divisive game. A lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. Me, I'm in the middle. I don't think it's a great game, but I don't think it's bad either. I just think it's didn't like it. Cestiria, I liked it, and Tales of Cestiria, I played it before the hate trade. Before I found out about the hate trade, I knew about the game, and I knew about its trailers, gameplay footage that I had seen before, but I didn't know a lot of people hated its guts. After I played it and looked it up online, and I saw people trashing it, and I was like, well, okay, the game wasn't stellar, and it wasn't fantastic, but it was alright. Yeah, so, in terms of reputation, for example, another example is Valkyria Revolution. A lot of people found out about it because it got such a negative reputation. Not as negative as Cestiria, but negative nonetheless. But yeah, because it's a dirt cheap game nowadays, maybe a lot of people went and bought it. And I was like, man, it's $10, it's $15, I'm just gonna pay for it just to see how bad it really is. And maybe some of those people got a nice surprise, like I told you before, it wasn't as bad as I thought. So, the only benefit I see from the negative publicity those JRPGs have is probably that they sold more copies. But most of those copies were like used copies, and the companies or the developers probably didn't benefit from those sales. But like I said, the game's reputation I don't think it was safe, you know. I don't think art is different, you know. But then again, let me give you another example. There's a Shin Megami Tensei example that I've always used. Shin Megami Tensei and Star Ocean are the same. You know, one game comes out and half the world hates it, and they develop this kind of mixed reputation, not exactly negative, but mixed reputation. And then the next one comes out, and suddenly the previous one is a masterpiece. Everybody says it's a masterpiece. And it happens in every form of entertainment. I remember the movie The Big Lebowski. Anybody seen that? The Big Lebowski? And that was a movie nobody liked. People didn't care about it. A lot of people didn't care for it. It was heavily criticized. And I freaking loved it when I was like... I watched it when I was like 18 years old, probably 19, when I was still working at Blockbuster. Man, that was 20 years ago. Nobody gave a fuck about that movie. And over time, for no reason, it got popular, became a cult classic, and nowadays everybody loves it. So maybe in 10 years, after 2 or 3 more Tales games have come out, maybe everybody is gonna say Cesteria is a masterpiece. I don't know. Thank you, Kiss. He asks, have you played Forever Kingdom? That's a PlayStation 2 action RPG follow-up to Evergrace, which should be called, instead of being called Evergrace, it should be called Disgrace or Disevergrace. It's not a terrible game, but it's kind of bad. It's mediocre, forgettable, boring. It's developed by From Software. Not by Miyazaki, but by From Software, who also developed Forever Kingdom. Forever Kingdom was definitely a better game, though it didn't age very well. Back then it was awesome. An action RPG with party members, you go around, fight enemies. It wasn't top tier, it was one of those like, okay, somebody was asking about tier lists. I will put that game on the B. I don't remember, I made a tier list on the PlayStation 2, and I don't remember if I put it on the C or the B. I forget. But my point is that it's a good game, much better than Evergrace. But it didn't age very well because it was an early PlayStation 2 action RPG with not the greatest controls. And back then it was great, but nowadays it feels very dated, clunky, sluggish, you know. A much better game, not by From Software, developed by Konami, is Sword of Etheria, where it only came out in Japan and Europe, not in North America. And that game aged better, you know, it has better controls, faster gameplay. And it's the same, you control 3 characters, switching between them at any time. Kind of like in Trinity, Souls of Zilol, which is also kind of similar. And, well, Trinity is the better of the bunch. But they have nothing to do with each other. Different developers, different games. What would you say is your most played video game in your life? Are you ready for this? It's probably Plants vs. Zombies. Any version, specifically the Nintendo DS version. I also have it on the PS Vita. And I also beat the computer version of it. And I play Plants vs. Zombies every now and then, where I played it yesterday while I was waiting for something. 2 days ago, same. Just a bit of it. But I've been playing that game for like 12 years, man. Yeah, Plants vs. Zombies, the original game on the Nintendo DS. Another one will be Worms, Open Warfare on the PSP. Another game that I played to death. One of those dead times when I was running my store. And even after the store, you know, it's a game to pick up and play just for a few minutes. Just play 1 or 2 battles and you're done. You know, to waste time. Super Mario World is another one that I've beaten to death, probably more than 10 times in my life. So that will probably be my top 3, but Plants vs. Zombies is probably the king. What do I think about the RPG Maker series? I think it's fantastic. I think it lets a lot of people develop, anybody, develop an RPG if they have the patience and if they have a little bit of skill. You don't really need like decent skills, or no, you just with a little bit of skill and discipline and patience. I don't have that, so I've never tried it. I only tried once on the PlayStation 1 and it was a disaster. I got impatient, I rage quit, and I was like, fuck it, I'm never gonna be a developer. That's when I decided to become a writer. Yeah, but yeah, RPG series are great. I was having a blast last year with the PS4/PS5 version, which is called MV Player. I played a shit ton of indie games and indie RPGs in there, and some of those I loved, Others were like kind of mediocre and forgettable, most of them actually. But yeah, the fact that that thing exists and lets people develop games, you know, some of the stories in those games are much better than some of the mainstream bullshit from nowadays. Okay, you're trying to ask if you need to play Tales of Exillia with both characters to get the best experience. Yes, and the game was designed to do that because you know what? The main story alone can be beaten in like 20 hours. It's one of the shortest Tales games ever made. Probably the shortest. No, Tempest is the shortest. Tempest can be completed in like 14 hours. Anyway, Exillia, it was designed with that in mind, to beat the game with both characters. However, I should suggest beating the game with one character and then waiting months, maybe even years if you want to play with the other character. Because the stories are so similar and most of the time you play the game with both characters in your party and you see the same events and fight the same battles. Kind of like in Star Ocean, the second story, or the Divine Force. Like 80% is the same game, no matter who you choose. But that 20% in Tales of Exillia is worth it. If you play the game with Mila first, which is what I did, and then sometime later you play with Jude, it's worth it. Jude goes through some hardcore bullshit and some emotional stuff. I mean, yeah, it's worth it. And like I said, it was designed to be played with both protagonists. That's why the game's short. The Golden Sun GBA games will be released on Switch Virtual Console next Wednesday. That's awesome. I'm not the biggest fan of Golden Sun, but that's awesome. There's a lot of fucking fans out there who want them. So, Jesus, about time, Nintendo. About fucking time. That's the least you can do with that IP. Where would you rank Vivi from Final Fantasy IX if you did a Final Fantasy characters tier list? Ooh, Vivi will be in the S. He's an amazing character and he's a badass mage, and who doesn't love that little fucker? I love Vivi, man. That would be on the S. Vent asks, did you have experience? You just finished the old game and then that game gets remastered? I don't know if any of you guys remember, but I did a full playthrough on the New Game Plus file in the original PlayStation 1 Chrono Cross. And then after I finished it, like 2 or 3 weeks later, the remaster was announced. And I was like, fuck! Fuck! I think that's the only time. Well, Live Alive, I went through something similar. I streamed the original Live Alive, and then like a couple of months later, the remake was announced. But I only streamed the game. I didn't finish it. But yeah, that was fucking ridiculous. No, Unicorn Overlord plays like Tactics Ogre. So it's grid-based. People, characters move in turns and that shit. Now I'm even more excited for it. Vanillaware has never made a grid-based, turn-based strategy RPG. Never. The closest they got was with a real-time strategy RPG, which was 13 Sentinels a couple of years ago. So now it's gonna be like grid-based, like oh my god, maybe it will be a day one purchase for me. I don't know yet. But I don't want to support Atlus USA. Fuck those guys. Well, hopefully the part of the money is gonna go to the developers, right? So that's why I still love Atlus, but only in Japan. I'd love to see Majin Tensei games get some modern love. Well, you know what the problem with Atlus is? They don't really seem to care that much about remastering their old games, their really old games. It's like they only care about the like popular SMT and Persona games. I don't know if we'll ever see some of those games that never came out of Japan remastered or remade for modern systems. Because, you know, they did bring SMT1, the original on the Super Famicom, for mobile games, and that was a worldwide release. But I mean, nobody fucking cares about mobile games, Atlus. Maybe in Japan, but if you're gonna localize something to the West, don't make it mobile, man. Just do a console release, or at the very fucking least, a PC release. Steam, at the very least, man. It's just unnerving how Atlus, they don't give a fuck. But maybe SMT has gotten more popular over the past few years, especially thanks to Persona, thanks to SMT5, the Nocturne remaster. I think it sold 1 million copies, or no, I don't think so, but it sold a lot. It was commercially successful, so maybe that'll open their eyes and they'll probably see that there's a lot of love for the series and that people want those only in Japan games localized in some form or another. We can all agree they need a remake. They're severely outdated. Those Digital Devil Story games, those SMT games, SMT Eve, those games are very outdated. Not enjoyable to play nowadays, in my opinion. So I'm pretty sure a remake will be the best idea, but that's a lot of money, because remaking a game from scratch is pretty much making a game from scratch, and they need a lot of money and budget from that. And money is an issue as always. Oh, Atlus. Oh, Sega. Konami or Atlus, which is worse? Konami. How can you even compare Atlus with Konami, man? That's blasphemy. Konami is like the worst of the worst. They've been trying to redeem themselves with some remasters and shit, but it's gonna be very hard for people, including me, to forgive every fucking video game transgression Konami has done in the past 25 fucking years. Well, let's give them a break. 20 years. Early 2000s was when they start going to hell. Mid 2000s. Yeah, for the past 20 years or so. No, man, how can you compare Konami with Atlus? Or are you comparing Konami with Atlus USA? Then Konami still worse. I have a full-time job and my backlog just increases every month and I can't play them all. Then stop buying them all. Video games are not Pokemon. You don't have to get them all and catch them all. Stick to the ones that you really want to play and you're really interested on, and then stick to those. Play them and that's it. You don't have to play them all. Do you also like the Metroidvania games? No, I'm not really a fan of Metroidvanias. I've enjoyed some. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night was one of my favorites, but I'm not really into Metroidvania. I like it when they have some small Metroidvania elements, like a Sword of the Vagrant that I just beat like a month ago. That was great. Making you go back and forth to get treasure and stuff, you know, but like proper Metroidvania, I'm not really a fan of the genre. There's one that I really want to play, man, but it's got some Metroidvania stuff in there and I'm unsure about it. It's called After Image. Have you guys seen that game, After Image? It also has some RPG elements. I really want to play it. It's kind of cheap nowadays. It's like I think it goes for like $20, a little bit less. I'm gonna wait until it's like 15 to buy it, because I don't want to risk more money in a game that maybe I won't like, but I really want to play it. But anyway, not really a fan of Metroidvanias in general, and I think it's also a plague, like Souls-like. There's way too many of them. And do you think there's any hope for Fuga 1 and 2 to get a physical release one day? Yeah, they were kind of successful, especially the first one. I don't know, man, I hope so. I really would love to collect those three. Or maybe what they're gonna do is release a third game, because it's supposed to be a trilogy. There will be a third game, it's a guarantee. Probably next year. Maybe they're waiting for the 3 games to come out and put them all together in a physical release. I'd love that too. If not, I will buy them separately, I don't care. Really good games. Have you played the story of Thor? Yeah, it's called Beyond Oasis here in the West. And there was, well, pretty much Beyond Oasis 2 on the Sega Saturn. I barely touched that one. I played the one on the Genesis. Pretty good game. Never finished it. Any physical game that you want and can't find or is too expensive? What? I can make a top 100 physical games that I want and can't find or are too expensive. Nowadays, Poison Control, Dead End Request 2. Yeah. There's too many, man. Trails into Reverie hasn't gone down in price. The Legend of Nayuta. A lot of NIS America games, man. Atlus games. Holy shit. I still don't have Star Ocean, the second story R. I got a digital copy of it, just not a physical one, and I want to own it. But that's gonna go down in price, I'm sure, eventually. But I don't see Trails into Reverie going down in price anytime soon. So I guess I'm stuck with my digital copy of it.